Hey, Pro-Life Jen, Happy New Year, and welcome back to the Kristan Hawkins Show. This week, I'm going to be showing you the commercial made by Students for Life that should have been played during the NFL game this past weekend, the last game of regular season, but got denied. It's crazy. I also want to talk about the craze about assisted suicide and how this is going to be a continued topic in our nation's discussion, and about the recent terrorist attacks and why I think they could have been prevented. In case you missed it, Students for Life of America prepared a commercial that was going to air this past week during the last NFL regular season game on TVs and stations in airports across the nation, because airports are kind of cool to show commercials at because you have sort of a stuck audience and they have to watch. The commercial was calling on Congress to defund and debar Planned Parenthood and exposing its federal taxpayer funding, because the general public, not you all who tune into the Kristan Hawkins Show, but I would say largely the general public is very confused and misguided about what Planned Parenthood is, what they actually do, what they don't do. And most people we have seen on college campuses in our conversations have no idea the amount of money we subsidize Planned Parenthood with. So if you haven't seen the commercial already, I want you to watch it right now. It's quick. Now, is the network airing NFL games concerned that this commercial you just saw is going to be too sensitive for football fans to see? ReachTV was the ad buyer that we purchased the ad spot through to show the commercial during the NFL game. They are the ones who canceled the spot, even after we actually modified this commercial, instead of saying football stadiums to say athletic stadiums, because football stadiums was too mean. They're the ones who officially canceled it. They didn't ask us to change it. They wouldn't even let us change it. It was, we're refunding your money. You can't show this ad. This is why we actually launched a national digital ad buy last weekend after we found out this ad was not going to be airing, with all the funding we had raised, to make sure we actually reach even more people with this ad than previously intended. It's kind of shocking, though, if you think about this ad. It's not gruesome. It doesn't go into the details about how abortions are committed. It simply lays out the facts that Planned Parenthood kills enough children. This is how many children they kill to fill up 6.5 football stadiums every year. I think that's a visual that every American really needs to have and needs to see in their minds when they hear the word or when they think about Planned Parenthood. Everyday Americans, the Americans who watch these Sunday football games, deserve to know that they are paying Planned Parenthood money to kill human lives. In fact, they receive over $2 million a day in taxpayer funds, yet take that money and kill more than 1,000 babies. That's crazy. Talking about Planned Parenthood and asking Congress to, do their job and debar and defund Planned Parenthood should not be controversial. In fact, it's sort of in line with what President Trump's been, saying for the past several months, saying that he no longer wants abortion to be federal. Well, if you're paying for something with federal taxpayer dollars, Mr. President, abortion is federal. So why does Planned Parenthood need to be debarred and defunded? And what is debarment? I don't want to go rehash into it here, because before the end of 2024, I did a whole podcast segment on what debarment is and why they should be debarred. Bottom line, Planned Parenthood commits felonies and violates laws over and over again. They continue to sell the broken bodies of children they abort for profit. Now their latest thing is they don't get actual cash money, but they get the patents off of the research that's conducted on these children. So if pharmaceutical drugs or some invention is created, they get all the cash money from that. They have already admitted in the state of Texas to double billing. The state of Texas is a Medicaid fund, which is the money going towards people who can't afford health insurance. That's called fraud. Over and over again, we've had undercover videos detailing how Planned Parenthood covers up the abuse of minors and how pimps and sex abusers can go in and facilitate abortions of minors so their crimes never come to light. Planned Parenthood, besides all of these felonies that they commit, also is killing babies. They killed 392,715 from their latest annual report. And those are, first of all, that's just what they tell us. That's about 40% of all abortions in the United States. Taxpayer funding of abortion, while their abortion numbers continue to rise, according to their own annual reports, taxpayer funding of abortion continues to rise. The last number we have from 2022 to 23 was $699 million. Plus, we know from the annual report, 45 Planned Parenthood locations are now selling sex manipulating, potentially sterilizing drugs to gender confused individuals. They are the second largest source of wrong sex hormone therapy in our country. And they actually brag about this. But seriously, if the NFL, first of all, the NFL needs to have a conversation with their sales team, and both parties need to man up. Stop being too cowardly to allow a group to tell the truth about what Planned Parenthood is and what they do. I mean, I don't know, next time all your players start taking a knee on the field, maybe they should take a knee for abortion. So if you've been paying attention to social media recently, you've probably seen some talk about assisted suicide. I'm not on social a lot, but I've even seen it. So I know it's out there. Assisted suicide is what it sounds like. It's when someone, specifically a doctor, helps you end your life, kill yourself. Some countries and 10 states in the United States, plus Washington, D.C., which, by the way, is not a state and should never become a state, PSA, these states allow individuals to order a cocktail of deadly drugs to end their own lives. You'll often hear it referred to, like an abortion. The abortion lobby doesn't want to say the word abortion. That's why we always say the word abortion, because the word abortion is, even with all the billions of dollars they've spent in marketing campaigns trying to normalize abortion, people still when they hear that word kind of get tense in their stomach, have an icky feeling. Top of the mind polling says that when people hear the word abortion, they still think of death, killing, sadness. Same problem with assisted suicide. So assisted suicide advocates now have taken a play from the abortion lobby's handbook, and they have different names for assisted suicide. You'll hear things like death with dignity, physician assisted suicide, medical aid in dying. But it's not dignified. It's not good medicine. It's not just simply assisting a person with the end of their existence. They no longer exist. They're not here. They're dead. This is an issue that pro-life advocates and the pro-life movement has always cared about, just like abortion, because assisted suicide targets vulnerable people and tells them their lives may not be worth living. And we're only a few decades into the global trend of assisted suicide, but to be honest, things have escalated extremely quickly here. Suicide parties are now a thing. We are supposed to celebrate life. That's why we have birthday parties. No. The assisted suicide lobby now has suicide parties where they encourage you to invite your friends over, you eat, you drink, you reminisce, and then at the end of the party, you take a cocktail of drugs, pills that will kill you, and everyone leaves when you're dead. It's literally the opposite of a birthday party. Instead of friends joining you to celebrate your life and how many years you have left or the good things left to come, they look at you as you take drugs that are going to stop your beating heart. A Georgia newspaper recently ran a long piece about this new trend in suicide parties. It featured a woman who attended her friend's suicide party. And I want to read a portion of this newspaper article to you. It opens up with two women talking about the suicide party they attended in California, where it's illegal. It's one of the 10 states it's legal. Quote, their friend had chosen to end her struggles that morning in an end-of-life ceremony held at her friend's home among a small group of loved ones and an end-of-life doula named Anitha Grimison. On the hike, both women shed tears, but there was not a big sense of doom. Werner was excited that everything had gone according to her friend's death plan and that her suffering had ended. She quote said, we were sad and she will be sorely missed, but we will all leave this earth, and I'm happy for her in a weird way. She was suffering, but she made it really comfortable for everybody. She was excited for her D-Day. It put her in control of a body that wasn't functioning for her anymore. What's notable about this story is how nonchalant this whole thing is. Like, it's not a barbaric practice that only a deranged society would tolerate. Some of you who are watching or listening may be old enough to remember when, the universal reaction to hearing the word like suicide party would have been like shock, horror, disbelief. It may be something you would see in like a sketch show like Saturday Night Live, not in the mainstream media report. But as we've seen with the abortion movement, the pro-death worldview has a way of rapidly changing our cultural norms. The core belief that we have as pro-lifers is that life is objectively a good thing without qualifications. The pro-abortion worldview is that life is only a good fit if it first fits certain qualifications. It says life is disposable if the child is inconvenient to his or her parents, or the child might potentially suffer with a medical diagnosis. It's basically the same as the pro-suicide worldview that says that life can cease to have value or dignity when there is suffering or poverty or mental illness present, or you've reached some certain threshold that they've come up with. Not surprisingly, the most pro-abortion states also tend to be the most pro-suicide. Google came up with a list, told me my list of states that a physician-assisted suicide, as Google calls it, is legal. California, Colorado, Hawaii, Maine, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, then also Washington, D.C., once again, not a state. These are the most liberal abortion states in our country. Hawaii and Colorado and California were the first three to legalize abortion. New Mexico is home to the late-term abortion capital of the country. Oregon, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. These are very pro-abortion. Washington, D.C., where late-term abortion is still a thing. Washington State, where the governor was stockpiling chemical abortion pills before Roe's fall, if you'll remember that. Assisted suicide has been on the ballot from time to time. The most recent ballot initiative actually was a victory. This November, West Virginia voted to put it in their constitution to make physician-assisted suicide illegal, which was huge. But you're also going to see it at the state legislative level. It's much easier for them to pass laws with legislators. So we've just found out that the state of Illinois is going to be debating this. And Illinois, we have a lawsuit against the state of Illinois right now at Students for Life for trying to force pro-life employers, force students, force Illinois residents and citizens to pay for abortion in their health insurance plans. Illinois is off the reservation. Their governor, J.B. Pritzker, actually had his own pro-abortion fund this year in the elections, where he was putting his own money and raising other money to fund pro-abortion ballot referendums. Hundreds of millions of dollars, not a little bit, hundreds of millions. Typically, assisted suicide is legalized with certain parameters that it gets the votes, where it's it's a last resort just for individuals who are suffering, that they are going to die anyway. But really, it's a bait and switch, because if you look at what happened to Belgium, Belgium legalized euthanasia for terminally ill adults in 2002. But it only took 12 years, for Belgium to start saying that it's illegal to euthanize children as young as 12 years old. So when people say, "Oh, don't worry, it's only for people who are gonna, they're gonna die anyway," that's not really their intention. If you look in Canada, where assisted suicide is legal, the Canadian government, their program called MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying, found that 4.7% of Canadians who died in 2023 were actually killed using MAID, the government-funded assisted suicide fund. Out of 20,000 requests that came into MAID in 2023, only 915 were denied. And the requests for MAID continue to go up year after year after year, even 5 years into the program. It doesn't stop. We also, in the pro-life movement, a lot of us have friends and relationships within the broader disability rights community. I mean, I have 2 children with cystic fibrosis. Many people in the disability rights community who aren't even, some of them may not even be with us on the issue of abortion, have actually raised the alarm that assisted suicide pressures and coerces disabled individuals to end their lives rather than being perceived as a burden on their caregivers. And we've seen this time and time again. If you just Google assisted suicide, look up news articles, read the quotes from people who have gone public saying they're going to, take these pills to end their life. Many of them will cite as a reason for doing so is that they don't want to be a burden on their loved ones, on their friends and family. When you legalize assisted suicide, when you push assisted suicide, when you say that there's government taxpayer funding for assisted suicide, you are coercing those people, because the message that they're getting is, hey, here's your path. It's similar. I think it's similar to when we talk to women who have had abortions, and they'll say, I didn't want to have an abortion, right? I didn't want to go through with it. But, when I talked to my parents, I talked to my boyfriend, I talked to so-and-so, everyone said it was my body, my choice. And this is something we've said for years in the pro-life movement. When she hears that phrase, when she doesn't hear, I love you, I'll stand by you, I'll support you, whatever it takes. When she doesn't hear that, when she hears, it's your body, your choice, I'll support you, whatever you do, what she hears is having an abortion. What she needs to hear is, you don't have to do this. In fact, we found this when I wrote my book back in 2010, where we interviewed Students for Life leaders who had been involved in abortion decisions, whether they had chosen life themselves, they had helped someone choose life, or if they had chosen abortion. And the common thread from everybody we interviewed was the young women who courageously chose life, did so because they found one person who didn't repeat the left's talking points. And that is why this is so harmful. So you have people who are fearing that they're going to become a burden on their loved ones, on their children. And then they get a letter in the mail, which we know happens in Oregon. There's been lots of articles about that. Then they get a letter in the mail. Oh, I'm so sorry. We've heard you've been diagnosed with whatever. Did you know that, assisted suicide is legal in Oregon and we'll pay for it? What do you think the message that they're getting is? Hear me when I say this, friends. Life is worth living. Our lives are short. Extremely short in the grand scheme of history. And when you think of eternity that we will have in heaven. And there are many things in our life that aren't guaranteed, but there are 2 things that are always guaranteed: death and taxes. You can get a break for taxes or cheat, but you can't get a break or cheat death. It's coming for all of us. So we have to live our lives with conviction that we belong here, that there's something we were sent to do here. There's something that we will do here, even in our pain. The baseball player Gary Carter was asked once by a reporter how he could keep playing the game despite having terrible knee pain. Carter says, sometimes you just have to play in the pain. And that's life. All of us will suffer in life. Suffering is guaranteed. Some of it's mental, some of it's physical, some of it's, private, some of it's very public. All of us will suffer. That is guaranteed in life. But it doesn't mean our life isn't worth living. I think the question for us when we look back at our lives is, what did we do? What did we accomplish despite everything that the world threw at us, that the pain we faced? Life is worth living. And that's the message we should be sending to our friends and our loved ones, not attending or helping them plan a suicide party. All right. So I'm going to talk about the even harder thing. It's like the Kristan Hawkins Show. It's like, you always talk about hard things. Sometimes I just want to talk about easy things, but that's not what we're here to do. Harder thing to talk about. 2025 started off with 2 horrific terrorist attacks in New Orleans and Las Vegas. Lives were lost. One of the things I thought was interesting when I was watching, and my children and I were watching the press conferences coming from New Orleans, was maybe if Joe Biden had focused on hunting down real terrorists during his 4 years as president, rather than targeting Catholics and pro-lifers and other innocents, maybe these Americans wouldn't have been killed. Maybe not. Our nation really relies on the FBI to find, and Department of Homeland Security to find terrorists before they strike. We often are told, if you see something, say something, right? If you're at a airport and you see somebody leave a bag, you're supposed to immediately go get that person. If they don't come back, go get a TSA officer. The FBI is supposed to investigate people that, we might see on social media. They're like, wow, they're not quite right. Or they're making threats that mentally, they might not be in this right state of mind. You're told to tell on those people, not just be like, oh, well, we all know Joe was going to commit an act of terrorism. No, we have and I think largely we all would agree that we have a responsibility that if we see a friend or loved one making, terrorist threats, doing things that seem like, maybe they're making a bomb, to report them, to say, look, we need to get this checked out. The FBI is supposed to investigate and figure out, is this just like a person who's, mentally unstable, just making threats, or is this someone who's actually going to act? But what we've seen in the last 4 years is an FBI, an entire Biden administration, entire federal government that seems to care more, honestly, in my view, to watching Catholics and pro-lifers and trying to make these baseless arguments that we could be threats, rather than actual raging lunatics who drive cars into crowds of innocent people or blow up Cybertrucks. I mean, think about it. There was not long ago an FBI memo, which we can put up on the screen here, that went out under Joe Biden's administration, calling for the watch of Catholics who go to Latin Mass because they could be potential domestic terrorists. We had to keep an eye on these mass goers. To prevent what? I don't know, but that's what they were supposed to do. There was at Fort Bragg, or now Fort Liberty, a whole presentation given on potential domestic terrorists and pro-life. We got a whole slide, people. They said if you had a Choose Life bumper sticker, those really ugly vanity license plates that you can get in certain states, like Idaho just got one, which thankfully it's prettier. But in a lot of states, they're like yellow. And if you choose it, money goes to, part of your license purchase goes to the pregnancy center. So it's really a good thing because it funds pregnancy centers. They're really ugly. People who choose to put an ugly yellow Choose Life bumper sticker. And I don't understand the reason why making them ugly, because yellow stands out and people see them. I get it. I'm like, oh, I don't want that in my car. Don't worry. Like I said, Idaho, when I finally get my Idaho license plate, Choose Life is new and it's nice, not yellow. But anyway, people who choose to put that on their car, they said that those people are potential domestic terrorists. That's what the Biden administration has been working on. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. What were Catholics going to Latin Mass and going to Mass every week just a threat to Joe Biden because they were going to pray that he was going to lose his election? Pro-lifers that put ugly license plates on their cars just so they can give money to the pregnancy center and represent the pro-life movement, even if they have really nice cars. I was at a supporter's home one time and she had this beautiful, I don't know, it was like a Mercedes or something. It was an ugly license plate. People who do that, right? They're potential domestic terrorists. They're willing to put something that's not aesthetically pleasing on their car. That makes them potential terrorists. It's unbelievable. I mean, think about the people who are still sitting in federal penitentiaries. This has been our key, to-do item for President Trump, day one of his administration, right? Reinstate Mexico City policy, stop federal funding of abortion promoting agencies overseas, and commute sentences or issue pardons for all the pro-lifers that the Biden administration used the FACE Act to prosecute since Roe was reversed. Here, the Federalist had more on this recently. They wrote, during the Biden administration, the FBI targeted 55 pro-lifers for, quote, praying, singing, and evangelizing at abortion facilities across the U.S. Under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, FACE Act, the Biden administration targeted these pro-lifers instead of actually targeting terrorists, or at least the 90 instances of abortion-fueled firebombing, vandalization, and other attacks on life-saving pregnancy centers, pro-life organizations, and churches. So there's been 90 documented cases of firebombings, vandalizations, and other violent attacks at pregnancy centers, churches, and pro-life organizations since the fall of the Roe versus Wade decision, since June 2022. No one's gone to prison for them. But you know who's gone to prison? 75-year-old Paulette Harlow, who was charged and found guilty of violating the FACE Act after she prayed in front of an abortion facility in Washington, D.C. and refused to move. She was sentenced to 2 years in federal penitentiary. 2 years. She may die in prison. The Biden administration has staunchly used the so-called FACE Act against pro-lifers. FACE was passed in 1994, in part to stop and scare pro-life advocates who had been doing 1960s-style sit-ins in front of abortion facilities and refusing to move. These sit-ins, by the way, were kind of effective because no one could get into the abortion facility, so babies couldn't be killed. And we know of lives that are saved today because their mothers had to wait a day for the police to remove all the people praying and sitting in front of an abortion facility to have the abortion, and then they changed their mind. The law, in theory, is also supposed to protect houses of worship and pregnancy centers. But it's really interesting because the Biden administration hasn't been protecting churches or pregnancy centers. They haven't prosecuted a single one of the 436 attacks on churches that happened last year. That number came from the Family Research Council. U.S. Congressman Chip Roy, who is a hero in the pro-life movement for what he does on the floor of the House of Representatives. He isn't always well liked because he stands up on a lot of things that people cave in on too early. But Chip Roy didn't mince words at a hearing on the FACE Act back in December when he called out this double standard. Representative Roy said, quote, to this day, the FACE Act has never been used in defense of a church since it was passed in 1994. Unfortunately, over the last 4 years, the Biden-Harris administration has weaponized this act through disproportionately targeting pro-life Americans for FACE Act violations while simultaneously failing to protect pregnancy resource facilities despite being the target of growing violence. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So, when I think about these horrendous terrorist attacks that should have never happened, that ended innocent life in New Orleans, that's the firebombing there in Las Vegas, I can't help but think if the Biden-Harris administration, who I don't know, had been focused on actually investigating potential threats of terrorism, potential terrorists, that we wouldn't have been in this position. Because I certainly know how they've been spending their time. Let's all hope that the new FBI director spends more time tracking down bad guys before they commit mass atrocities than using U.S. laws to punish grandmas like Paulette Harlow, who's still in prison for praying in front of abortion facilities, and for volunteers who go to pregnancy centers every day to hand out diapers and to help women in unplanned crisis pregnancies. It's unbelievable. Let's hope for the future. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's episode of the Kristan Hawkins Show. I hope you will subscribe and follow for more discussions like this. To hear from me daily, to get a quick text message from me daily that I personally write, for its pro-life news, action items, join my personal text list. You can just type in my name, Kristan, Kristan, to the number. If you put in the number on your text there, it's 53445. So just text 53445 Type in the word Kristan and you'll be automatically subscribed. Also, I hope you've got your tickets to the 2025 National Pro-Life Summit happening on Saturday, January 25th, the day after the National March for Life, because it's officially sold out. But you can still get a ticket for the overflow room, and you can still have access to all the great speakers, workshop sessions if you go to prolifesummit.org. If you can't make it to Washington, D.C. on Saturday, January 25th for the Pro-Life Summit, you can watch it live at prolifesummit.com. More details will be coming on the live stream. We're going to have some amazing speakers this year. This might be like our best speaker lineup ever. Obviously, yours truly will be there. I hope you join us either in person or tune in. Go to prolifesummit.com to get all the details for that. Thank you all for listening and watching to this podcast. I'm sorry my voice still sounds a little raspy. I had surgery a couple of weeks ago. I think I'm entering my third week this week. So my voice is going to be a little bit more raspy until I can get it up to normal. You don't want to be sitting next to me at Mass right now because my singing voice is not up to speed. But it'll continue to get better, and I hope to hear and see you in Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks. And I hope to be reading your comments about the podcast, what you think about the show, topics you want to see us cover, breaking news in the pro-life movement. Until next week, keep speaking up for the voiceless and keep standing up for life. We're in this together.